All Pokemon are not created equal. Every species has fixed, unchangeable stats that ultimately define the strength, value, and potential of that Pokemon. So this made me wonder, if you played Pokemon Scarlet using only the weakest, worst Pokemon team possible in the entire game, would it still be possible to beat the game? Well, that's exactly what I tried to do. Here's how it went. We load into the game, and the first question we need to answer is, what is the weakest Pokemon team? You might think that one of the starter Pokemon would qualify, since this is what's given to you for free right at the beginning of the game. However, even these are considered too strong for this challenge. And just to put things into perspective, the Paldean starters are more than 50% stronger than anything we can use. See, each Pokemon has 6 stats with fixed values. Adding these values together gives you the base stat total, also known as the BST. So, for this challenge, we're only able to use those Pokemon with the absolute lowest BST in the entire game. These starters have a stat total of 310, while our Pokemon team will have a maximum stat total of only 200, which is utterly abysmal. So, what are these awful Pokemon? Well, since they're considered the worst Pokemon in the game, thankfully, they're all available pretty early on. With that, the first member of our garbage team is Scatterbug. Boasting some utterly abysmal stats that not even a mother could love, as well as barely learning any moves, this little bug type perfectly represents the standard of Pokemon that we'll be stuck with for this challenge. Great. Awesome. Thanks. The second member of our new garbage team can also be found nearby, Azurill. With less offensive power than a Gentle Breeze, Azurill does at least get access to some interesting moves, and its abilities are pretty useful too. Although, I don't know why it looks so sad in the official artwork. Who hurt you, Azurill? Besides Azurill, there's one more fairy type we can recruit for our team, Ralts. Gallade and Gardevoir are powerful Pokemon, but Ralts is not. Physically, it's about as durable as a wet tissue, but its special stats are probably the best that we're going to get here. It also has access to a wide move pool, making Ralts a very pivotal member of our team. There are 2 more eligible Pokemon that we can catch right away, Magikarp and Suncomb. These 2 have been the poster child of awful Pokemon for over 2 decades now. Even their Pokedex entries are just roasting them. An underpowered, pathetic Pokemon. It is very weak. That pretty much summarizes what you can expect from these 2. That's all the Pokemon we can catch for now, and isn't our team just looking incredible? Truly one of the Pokemon teams of all time. And under the rules of this challenge, these Pokemon aren't allowed to evolve, and we're also not allowed to overlevel them past the next gym leader's ace. So we can't just grind them up to level 100 to win. Basically, there's no way for me to magically make these Pokemon good. So, to power them up as much as possible, I collected some nearby TMs to give our little trash bags a boost before training them up against some wild Pokemon. And if you're still not convinced of how awful our team is, during this training, I somehow got swept by a single level 8 Fletchling. I fear we might be in trouble here. Regardless, once our team had been leveled up a bit, I charged up the hill towards Misagoza. Waiting for us at the gate is our rival, Nemona. She forces us into a battle, and this is the first fight of the game since we've been able to collect our team. So, this is the first real hurdle for our roster of underdogs to overcome. To maximize our chances, I made sure that Nemona ended up with the Grass-type Sprigatito as her starter. This is the best matchup for us, as we have the pathetically unthreatening Bug-type Scatterbug. Sprigatito's bites still do solid damage due to how frail we are, but thankfully, super effective Struggle Bugs hit even harder. As a result, while Scatterbug is brought to the brink of death, we claim our first kill after 3 turns. However, this brings out a much bigger threat, Pawmi. This thing is dangerous because Nemona instantly terastallizes, giving Pawmi a 50% boost to its electric attacks. And considering that our team is already frail to begin with, this did not go well. Instantly, our weakened Scatterbug is finished off, and the Azurill that follows is only able to land 1 measly Bubble Beam before it too is sent to its grave. Our Ralts that follows can survive 1 hit, but a Psybeam still isn't enough to take down Pawmi. Very quickly, we lost another Pokemon and our team was already completely falling apart in the first fight of the challenge. At least, it was, until Sunkern emerges. Despite the Pokedex completely dunking on him, Sunkern goes huge here. Its grass typing means that Sunkern can comfortably tank one of Pawmi's hits before a critical hit absorb is all we need to claim the final KO, sealing our first win over Nemona. Wow, that actually might be the worst Pokemon team I've ever laid eyes on. Yeah, and imagine how bad of a trainer you'd have to be to lose to a team like that. Shut up. Having crushed Nemona with the help of Sunkern the Goat, now we can access the main city of Misagoza, where two important things happen. First, we're given a Terra Orb, allowing us to now terrestrialize our Pokemon, which we will absolutely need to survive. After that, we go on a long voyage through cutscene hell, where we're given our main objectives of defeating all of the Titan Pokemon, gym leaders, and Team Star bosses. It's these fights that our team of trash will somehow need to overcome if we want to beat this game. And the first opponent in our sights is the first Titan, Claw. While Titan Pokemon are strong and have a huge HP bar, these fights are a 6-on-1, which gives us a lot of breathing room to focus on things like status effects and stat debuffs. This fight against Claw is a good example of this. Leading with Scatterbug, we barely tank a hit from Claw, but just manage to hold on. This allows us to paralyze it with Stun Spore, before Azurill can bounce on in and also work on nerfing Claw's attack with a few charms. This all means that now the Titan Crab is far less scary, and by spamming super effective Bubble Beams, Azurill cleans up the first phase. These Titan Pokemon do get stronger in their second phase, but we also get Arvin backing us up, which is a massive help. Mostly because our frail Pokemon can survive longer if the Titan attacks Arvin. Regardless, this second phase of the Claw fight is pretty straightforward, as Arvin ends up doing most of the work, while we basically watch on from the sidelines. Before long, Claw is taken down, and our team of trash bags had claimed another win. I expected that fight to be kinda easy, but this next one is a very different story, because this time we're taking on Katie, the first gym leader specializing in bug types. While her Pokemon are weak, ours are even weaker. And on top of that, we don't have anything that hard counters bug types. At least, that's what I thought. Because at level 15, Azurill learns the move Bounce, a flying type move with 85 power that hits Katie's bug types for big super effective damage. And while Azurill's attack stat is pretty pathetic, the huge power ability effectively doubles it, making this combination a real threat against Katie. My plan here was honestly just to try and steamroll Katie with Azurill, but that's not really viable for two main reasons. Firstly, Bounce has a 15% chance to miss, which makes it difficult to rely on when we absolutely need to land every hit. But putting that aside, the even bigger hurdle here is Teddiursa. This thing is a menace. Not only does it outspeed Azurill, but Teddiursa can also dish out massive damage with Fury Cutter, a move that gets stronger with each successive use. And since our team has all the defensive capabilities of a small twig, once Teddiursa builds up some momentum, our team is just thrashed into the dirt, one after the other. Very quickly, we suffered 2 more losses. However, now I'd built a solid plan to take on Katie and just needed a tiny bit of luck to pull it off. The fight begins and I still lead with Azurill since its bounce attack is great into Katie's first 2 Pokemon. Providing that both attacks land, we can pick up both KOs onto Nimble and Tarantula without taking too much damage on Azurill. But then, Teddiursa hits the field and this is where our strategy changes. This time, I switch into Sunkern, whose only real job here is to die at the hands of Fury Swipes, which thankfully it does. This allows us to send in Scatterbug next, and since Teddiursa hasn't yet built up any momentum with its Fury Cutter, Scatterbug is just able to survive an attack before hitting Teddiursa with Stun Spore. This paralysis is vital, as it lowers Teddiursa's speed, which we can then nerf even more with a String Shot before Scatterbug finally goes down. Thanks to that, Azurill now outspeeds Teddiursa, and since Bounce is a 2-turn move, we also prevent Fury Cutter from building up any momentum. As a result, Azurill can now safely land the 2 bounces needed to squash Teddiursa into its grave, giving us the win. Our team of trash bags had earned their first badge, but with how difficult this challenge already feels, I was starting to have some serious doubts about our chances of making it far in this game. Managing this team of awful Pokemon is going to be painful, much like how running your own business can also be a struggle. But at least with your business, you can make things easier to manage with the help of our sponsor, Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one software tool designed to help you run your own business, and one of these helpful tools is the Project app. See, managing complex projects with a lot of moving parts can be very overwhelming. However, with Odoo Project, you can create a custom dashboard that helps you visualize each component of a project, like each of the tasks and their associated deadlines. This allows even complex projects to be organized and simplified. For example, with the Kanban view, you can see every task and how close they are to being completed, as well as who's working on them and any other relevant tags. Or you can also use the Gantt view, which helps you map out the project timeline, as well as see any dependencies across different tasks. The project dashboard can be shared with other users and can be collaborated on in real time. On top of that, you can also schedule action items like calls, meetings, and reminders. So, to help make your business run smoother, check out Odoo by clicking the link in the description below. With Odoo, your first application is free forever. So, you've got nothing to lose by trying it out and seeing firsthand how Odoo can help your business. After having struggled that hard against the very first gym leader, I knew that we needed to fill out the rest of our team before moving on. There are still 2 eligible trash bag Pokemon left for us to obtain, and the first one can be found near the fields of Cortondo, Kricketot. Weighing in with a miserable base stat total of 194, just like Scatterbug, Kricketot is a bug type with poor offensive stats and an even poorer move pool. This is definitely one of the Pokemon of all time. Our next and final team member is a little interesting since it comes from an in-game trade, because this trainer here wants a Flabébé. After catching one of those, we can trade it over for a considerably worse Pokemon, Snom. Yet another bug type that only learns 2 moves through leveling up. Like all of our Pokemon, Snom has some all-round awful stats. On the plus side, it is an Ice type, which is nice to have, and I guess it at least learns some decent moves through TMs. So, with that, we had now assembled all of our eligible Pokemon for this challenge. Although, you probably noticed that there's 7 of them instead of 6. That's because the 6th worst stats in the game are a tie between Magikarp and Scatterbug at 200. As a result, I just decided to include both of these lovable trash bags in our squad. So, this is our full team. A stoppable force, a very easily movable object, my legion of garbage that I'll be relying on to carry me through all of Pokemon Scarlet. Our next objective takes us back over to the eastern side of Paldea, where soon after, we arrive in Artisan Town to take on our second gym. However, unfortunately for Brassius, he specializes in the one type that our team is actually pretty good against. With 3 bug types on our team, Brassius's grass types are relatively straightforward. His first 2 Pokemon aren't all that strong, allowing Snom to solo both his Petalil as well as the Smoliv that follows by just spamming Struggle Bug. Although Brassius's ace Sudowoodo is a much bigger threat. With access to the move Rock Throw, it can bury our bug types if left unchecked. Snom is the first victim, immediately being crushed by rocks and sent to its grave. To prevent the rest of our team from suffering the same fate, I send out Azurill next and begin using Charm. Through the power of sheer adorableness, this harshly lowers Sudowoodo's attack, which we can bring to -4 by the time Azurill goes down. From here, with Sudowoodo now nerfed, the rest of this fight is relatively straightforward. Rolls can gradually trim it down before Kricketot finishes the job with a few Terra-boosted bug bites. With that, we had taken down Brassius on the first try, something which he should probably be fired for. Despite that easy win though, there was a storm brewing, as this challenge would only get harder from here, because next up is the second Titan, and this is a fight that really worries me. Not only is Bombodil strong, but it also has access to both rock and flying moves, which could easily deal with 4 of our Pokemon. On top of that, this Bombodil fight doesn't let you heal in between phases, so you have to take it down twice in a row, making this fight incredibly deadly for our team. At least, it would have been if we didn't get insanely lucky. My plan for this fight was pretty straightforward. Leading with Azurill, we can just tank one attack from Bombardier. We then fire back with Charm, harshly lowering its attack. On the next turn though, we switch out Azurill, bringing in Kricketot, who is basically sacrificed as a result. But that sacrifice was absolutely necessary, as now we can safely bring in Scatterbug. Thanks to the attack drop on Bombardier, Scatterbug somehow survives a super effective pluck like an absolute king, allowing our bug to thankfully land a very important stun spore. With Bombardier now paralyzed, Scatterbug lowers its speed even more with String Shot before our heroic bug finally falls. And thanks to this, Azurill now outspeeds Bombardier, allowing us to land another charm onto the Titan before we lose our third Pokemon. Half of our team had already crumbled. But this is where we go on the attack, because Ralts' Draining Kiss deals decent, super effective damage to the Titan. And thanks to those attack nerfs, our frail Ralts can tank hits, while also healing back some of the damage thanks to Draining Kiss. Within a few turns, Bombardier's first phase had been taken care of. However, Phase 2 begins immediately, and while we don't get the chance to heal, Bombardier is back to full health with its stats returned to normal. Regardless, I had prepared a bulletproof plan for this exact situation. Pray to RNGesus that I don't get hit. Turns out, our team is so pathetic that Bombardier doesn't even see them as a threat, opting to just attack Arvin at every given opportunity. As a result, Ralts gets a free pass to just keep spamming Draining Kiss, and before long, with the help of Arvin's pet rock, we had somehow conquered this behemoth on our very first attempt. Although, I'm pretty sure this fight would have been the end of the challenge if not for Ralts. So, drop a like on this video right now to show some support for this lovable little melonhead. Yes, way to go, garbage man! Thanks, I guess? After the fight, Arvin shows us his sick dog, who he wants us to help heal. Although, I'm pretty sure that Arvin's dog, while on life support, is still stronger than my entire team. So, I don't know why he's asking me for help. Anyway, now we've conquered the first 4 boss fights of Pokemon Scarlet. However, next up, we have to contend with our first fight against Team Star. These are some of the toughest fights in the entire game. Although, the first Team Star boss is Giacomo, who uses Dark types, and you might think that makes him easy. I mean, we have 3 bugs and a fairy type, so this should be a breeze, right? Wrong. Despite having a good type matchup, this fight is still treacherous. The Starmobile is so powerful, and it's immune to status moves like Stun Spore, which we've been heavily reliant on so far. Even putting that aside, Giacomo's lead Pawniard is also a problem. Its Steel type means that it's not weak to Bug or Fairy, and its moveset gives Pawniard surprisingly good coverage against our team. Regardless, our last few fights had been smooth, and I still believed in our team of trash bags. So I confidently charged forward into the Team Star base, ready to take on Giacomo, and it was a bloodbath. Against the lead Pawniard, I try to paralyze it with Stun Spore, but the attack misses. As a result, Scatterbug is quickly finished off by Aerial Ace on the next turn, and our plan is completely blown to pieces. Our Pokemon can barely deal any damage to Pawniard, as one by one, our entire team just gets soloed, most of them not even able to tank a single hit. Yet again, we had lost. That was definitely our biggest beatdown yet, and I was once again starting to worry about our chances. But despite being slapped into the dirt there, I knew that I had to try again. This time, however, our fate was very different. I still lead with Scatterbug on attempt 2, but this time, we land a very crucial Stun Spore. This is important because not only does this help us outspeed Pawniard, but we also get some insane luck here, as Pawniard ends up being fully paralyzed for 3 turns in a row. This absurd luck allows our Kricketot to start pummeling Pawniard with Bug Bites, and after deciding to Terrastalize our bug, a 3rd Bug Bite is all we need to take down Giacomo's lead. Although he still has his ace in the back, and this thing is even scarier. However, I do have a plan. The first step is switching into our Sunkern, who does his best, landing a pretty pathetic Razor Leaf before falling. This lets us safely bring in Azurill, who can tank Dark-type attacks thanks to its Fairy typing. This means that not only are we able to land 2 charms onto the Starmobile, but we're also able to land a Tail Whip, nerfing its defense too. Once Azurill falls though, we've already lost half of our team, while the Starmobile is basically still at full health. But this is where we start to fight back as our deadly Snom hits the field. After tanking a Snarl like a king, Snom fires back with Struggle Bug. Not only is this a super effective bug move, but it also lowers the opponent's special attack, nerfing the Starmobile even more. And this is vital, as Struggle Bug nerfs, combined with Azuriel's charms from earlier, make this Starmobile far less threatening. While Snom does quickly fall, this clears us to bring our terastallized Kricketot back onto the field, and with us now able to comfortably tank the Starmobile's attacks, we unleash a string of terror-boosted bug bites, quickly ripping through the Starmobile's health, sending that car to the scrap heap. It may have taken a bit of luck, but with that, we had conquered our first team star boss. Our team are holding their own, and I'm genuinely proud of them for coming this far. Although it is very fitting that we're relying on a move called Struggle Bug, since this challenge is mostly just me struggling to survive with my bugs. With Giacomo now behind us, next we turn our attention towards the third gym leader, Iono. The first gym had some pretty weak Pokemon, and the second had a great type matchup for our bugs. However, the third gym has neither of these. Iono has 4 Pokemon, including some big, heavy hitters. On top of that, our team doesn't have any ground types or any decent options for dealing with electric types. Undoubtedly, this was going to be our toughest fight yet. With that in mind, I began the trip heading north of Artisan Town until we reached the grand city of Levincia, where Iono was waiting. But before we can take her on, first, we're ambushed by Nemona. Oh my god, you're still alive, garbage man? With that pathetic team of yours? Honestly, Nemona, I'm as shocked about this as you are. We are forced to fight Nemona here, but thankfully, this battle isn't too much trouble. She only has 3 Pokemon, 2 of which are still unevolved, as well as her Grass-type Florigato, who our bug types have a great matchup against. So, before long, her team had fallen, and we had embarrassed Nemona yet again. How did I lose to that garbage? Nemona, I'm pretty sure you have to give up your champion rank if you lose to a team with Sunkern on it. Shut up, shut up, shut up! With that taken care of, now we're clear to take on the gym. However, I knew that this was going to be rough, because even against the gym trainers, who are significantly weaker than the gym leader, I was already struggling to handle these electric types. Despite my cautious skepticism though, after struggling our way through the gym challenge, my team of trash and I stepped forward to tackle Iono. And this went about as well as you'd expect. We are able to make it past Iono's Watch Rule, but lose several Pokemon in the process. And once her Belly Bolt hits the field, what's left of our team immediately starts to crumble. Belly Bolt is just too bulky and hits way too hard for our team to handle. Very quickly, all 6 of our Pokemon had been slapped into the dirt in what was one of the most demoralizing beatdowns of this entire challenge. To be honest, I tried this fight multiple times, and while I was able to get lucky and make it past Belly Bolt on one of those attempts, I quickly came to the realization that there was no way for us to beat Iono as things currently stand. And I was left wondering whether this was truly the limit for our unwanted team of heroes. However, I wasn't ready to give up yet, but we do need some drastic changes. See, when I caught our team, I just captured random wild Pokemon. But what if, instead of that, our team was completely optimized? What if instead of a wild Magikarp, we had bred and trained a Magikarp to reach its maximum power, with optimized stats through IVs, EVs, egg moves, and natures. On top of that, determined to make these Pokemon as strong as possible, I also went hunting for useful TMs, as well as some very important held items. All of this gives our team a massive boost. With these optimizations, Azuriel's attack is now more than double what it used to be, and Sunkern has twice as much physical bulk. We still have the worst team possible, except now it's just the best possible version of the worst team in the game. In short, our trash was now a little less stinky, and I was determined to see how our upgraded team stacks up against Iono. So we marched back into the gym, but this time I had a deadly plan to make sure that things would be different. Our scheme to take down Iono starts with Ralts, who now knows the move Charm, which we use to nerf Wattrel's attack into the dirt at -6. Once that's taken care of, we switch into Sunkern. And this weak little seedling has two very important roles here. The first of which is to hit Wattrel with one of its new egg moves, Leech Seed, which will slowly chip away at Wattrel's health while also recovering HP back on our side of the field. On top of that, thanks to those attack nerfs, Wattrel's Pluck doesn't deal too much damage, so Sunkern is also able to use another new move, Encore. This forces Wattrel to keep using Pluck, ultimately preventing it from using Spark, which has a chance to paralyze us and could ruin the entire plan. But once Wattrel's locked into Pluck, we can switch again, bringing in our secret weapon, Azurill. See, while Azurill is an incredibly weak Pokemon, once it has access to its egg moves, Azurill can use an incredibly powerful combo. First, we use Belly Drum, a move that cuts half of our health, but also maximizes our attack at +6. Then, on the following turn, we use Rain Dance, changing the weather and boosting the power of our water-type moves for the next 4 turns. Combine this with its held Mystic Water, as well as the huge power ability, and Azurill had been turned into an absolute powerhouse. Thanks to Aquajet having a +1 priority, our low speed doesn't hold us back as it only takes one hit to finish off the weakened Wattrel. The dreaded Belly Bolt hits the field next, but even it isn't bulky enough to survive the overwhelming terror of our bouncing Azurill, as a single Aquajet takes it down too. The Luxio that follows suffers the exact same fate, leaving Iono with only her ace, Miss Magius. However, our Azurill continues being a beast, as with one last turn of rain left, a final Aquajet is all we need to slay Miss Magius, giving us a massive win over Iono, as well as some sweet, sweet revenge. That's gym badge number 3 secured, and our team of trash are somehow still alive in this challenge. Honestly, these team upgrades have given us a new lease on life. With a little extra power and access to some new strategies, our next few boss fights actually became pretty straightforward. Against the Steel-type Titan Orthworm, Arvin provides absolutely no help getting O-code as soon as the fight starts. Thankfully though, Ralts now has access to Mystical Fire through its egg moves. This deals super effective damage, and combined with Orthworm's pretty abysmal special defense, we can quickly melt it down into molten trash. After that, we face up against the Fire-type Team Star Boss, Mela. Although, we've already witnessed how menacing our Azurill can truly be, and the plan here is similar to our fight against Iono. After having Ralts change the weather with Rain Dance, we can send in Azurill and max out our attack by belly drumming, with Azurill's non-existent hands. As long as Torkoal uses Flame Wheel and not Smog, we can finish it off with an Aquajet on the next turn. Then, against the Revavroom that follows, with a little luck, we can survive long enough to land 2 more Aquajets, finishing the fight, giving us 2 big wins in quick succession. Once again, our momentum was running high, as next, we traveled towards Cascarafa. Look at this smug trainer. Thinks she's so cool just because she got to evolve her Azurill. It's not fair! It should have been me, not her! Coping and or seething aside, Cascarafa is where we get to take on the 4th gym leader, Kofu. Kofu's monobrow on its own is possibly more intimidating than my entire team put together. On top of that, his 3 fully evolved water types are also a threat, since our only real weapon against water types is Sunkern. Yeah, this guy right here. Despite that, our team had been holding their own, and I was feeling confident about the plan I'd put together. So, with our squad assembled, we charged into the gym, ready to take on Kofu. The battle begins, and my plan here is pretty straightforward. Kofu's lead Veluza only knows physical attacks, leaving Kofu exposed to being charmed by Azurill. Thanks to some recovery from our Citrus Berry, this all goes smooth, as Azurill quickly brings Veluza to -6 attack. From here, the plan is to use Leech Seed on Sunkern before switching into Ralts and having our Psychic-type Melonhead boost up its stats with Calm Mind. However, that's not what happened, because instead of Ralts boosting up with Calm Mind and stunting on Kofu's team, we got hit by a crit. Since critical hits ignore stat changes, obviously our frail little Ralts was crushed in a single shot, and my whole plan had fallen apart. At this point, I was ready to just reset and take my loss to go. But then, my team started doing something incredible. Our Pokemon started to fight back. Since Veluza is heavily nerfed, our Azurill can tank its hits pretty well, and thanks to the Leech Seed recovery, our bouncing blue ball is actually able to stall out Kofu's fish, evening up the score. This summons Wugtrio, who instantly gets the revenge kill, punting Azurill into its grave. Wugtrio hits hard, but it's also pretty frail, although its headbutts can cause me to flinch, which is really annoying. As a result, Snom is only able to land one struggle bug onto Kofu's worms before it goes down. And from here, my bad luck was only going to get even worse, because I sent in Scatterbug next, only for our bug to get flinched twice in a row, meaning it never even had a chance to move before its untimely death. Now the fight had descended into a 2v2, and from a base stats perspective, we are so outmatched here. However, don't underestimate our trash, because not only does our Kricketot tank a headbutt pretty well, but we also don't get flinched. This allows us to land a Bug Bite, followed by a Struggle Bug on the next turn, finishing off the frail Wugtrio. Now Kofu was left with only his ace, Crabominable, and its new adopted water typing. And instantly, this crab shows how much of a threat it is, as it only takes one Terra boosted Crab Hammer for our Kricketot to be bonked straight into the Shadow Realm. So now we were down to only our ace, Sunkern, a Pokemon that not even the Pokedex can complement. However, our Sunkern is as physically bulky as it can possibly be. Not only does Sunkern dodge Kofu's slam, we then fire back with a big Terra boosted Giga Drain that deals surprisingly solid damage. Then, on the next turn, Kofu's slam does connect, but Sunkern tanks it like an absolute king. Another Giga Drain puts Crabominable on the brink of death, while also recovering back most of our health. With that, all we need is one final Giga Drain to finish off Kofu's Crab, sealing the win despite having some horrible luck. What a wild clutch. We truly have been blessed by this holy seed today. That's 4 badges down, but it's not all good news. I hope you're happy, Garbage Man. Losing to a Sunkern made Kofu cry, and then his wife left him. This is all your fault. Look, don't blame me, blame Sunkern. He's the one responsible for this. Out of the 18 main game bosses, we had now defeated 9 of them, meaning that we had made it halfway through the game. But while our team of trash had built up some momentum, our opponents will keep getting stronger, while our team is already as strong as it can possibly get. As evidence of this steepening difficulty curve, next we have to take on the third team star boss, Atticus. And while the first 2 team star bosses only carry 2 Pokemon, Atticus has 4, all of which are fully evolved and deadly. However, despite this looking like an absolute nightmare of a matchup, I had a big brain plan to help make this fight very straightforward, and Team Star was about to witness the true potential of my trash. The battle begins, and Atticus' Skuntank only knows 3 moves, one of them being Sucker Punch, a Dark-type move. So, on turn 1, I Terrastallize Ralts into a pure Psychic type to bait Atticus into using Sucker Punch since it's now super effective. However, since Sucker Punch fails if I don't go for an attacking move, I can instead use Calm Mind for free, boosting up both my special attack and special defense. As Atticus repeatedly fails to Sucker Punch me, I can keep on boosting up Ralts' stats. At one point, Atticus does try to hit me with Toxic, but Ralts' health Pecha Berry cures the poison instantly, and before long, our little Psychic type had maxed out both of its special stats. However, this on its own isn't enough. Our Ralts is still slow and physically frail, meaning that Atticus' Starmobile or Revavroom will easily crush it. But this is where the next phase of my plan begins, because after Skuntank fires off its last Sucker Punch, we use a new move, Trick Room. With Trick Room, for the next 5 turns, slower Pokemon move first, reversing the turn order. Essentially, this turns our weakness of having a low speed stat into an advantage. With that, our supercharged Ralts was ready to cause chaos. With only a single Draining Kiss, Skuntank is smooched into its grave. And the rest of Atticus' team was not going to fare any better, as Ralts also knows Stored Power, a move which gets stronger with each of our stat buffs. Combine this with the boost from Psychic Terrastalization, and Atticus just stands no chance, as each of his Pokemon are mind crushed into the dirt. Even his Starmobile falls in a single shot, which feels so satisfying to look at, giving us a surprisingly dominant win. Atticus starts having a mental breakdown, and understandably so. I mean, this man just got swept by a single, unevolved Pokemon from the very first route of the game. Garbage Man is thy name, is it not? No, it is not. Very well, Garbage Man. Now get off my property before anyone else finds about what just happened here. With another Team Star Boss taken care of, now we've witnessed the two main strategies that my team of trash bags has in their arsenal. Our best options for dealing with strong enemies usually involve either Azurill with Belly Drum, Rain Dance, and Aqua Jet, or Ralts with Trick Room and Calm Mind like we just saw, while our other Pokemon either provide support or just bring good vibes and questionable intentions. Regardless, I was now wondering, how long could we rely on these strategies? Could our team really go all the way? Well, in the case of the next gym leader, Larry, his lead Komala has a similar kind of moveset as Atticus' Skuntank. So, while my plan is slightly different, ultimately this fight goes very similar to the last one, with Ralts boosting up with Calm Mind and eventually setting up Trick Room before running wild on Larry's team, yielding us our 5th badge. On top of that, the Titan fight that follows is also very clean. Great Tusk is a pretty good type matchup for us, so our Terra Sunkern continues destroying livelihoods as boosted Giga Drains help send Great Tusk back to the Jurassic Age. All of a sudden, we were racking up wins at an incredible pace. However, the good times were soon about to end, because the next fight is against Rhyme and her ghost types. The main reason why this fight is so deadly for us is that it's a double battle. This is a problem because our two main strategies both revolve around nerfing our opponent's lead and then boosting up our stats. However, that's just not viable when going up against two Pokemon at the same time that can both lay down big damage. So I knew that we were going to have our work cut out for us as I began to climb up Glaciado Mountain before gliding on into spooky HQ, Montenevera. Ah, Garbage Man. I still remember your first day at the academy. You had such awful Pokemon back then, and everyone laughed at you, even the staff. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. I'm sure you've grown since then though. What kind of strong Pokemon have you caught? I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, after clearing the gym challenge with some warm-up battles, we were finally ready to take on Rhyme. However, this did not go well. I tried using my Azurill Belly Drum strat, but a slash from Mimikyu, followed by an Icy Wind from Banette, puts us at below half HP, causing Belly Drum to just flat out fail. Our Pokemon can still lay down some chip damage though, with Rhyme and I trading KOs with Snom and Banette. However, by no means is this an even matchup, because on the next turn, Mimikyu finishes off our weakened Azurill with Slash, before Ralts is decimated on the turn after that at the hands of Houndstone and its super effective Phantom Force. Our team was quickly crumbling, and it didn't take long for the rest to fall too. Our damage output is just so pathetic, as Rhyme quickly finished off our final 3 Pokemon, still with half of her team remaining. Once again, we had lost. This double battle is a fight unlike anything our trash team had had to deal with so far, and so I needed a different approach. Thankfully though, this specific battle against Rhyme has a unique mechanic: crowd buffs. Essentially, certain actions, like getting a KO, hitting a super effective move, or terastallizing, can cause the crowd to give stat buffs at the end of the turn. So, while our Pokemon can't compete on even footing, what if instead, we tried to take advantage of the crowd? With that in mind, I now had a new plan, and charged back towards Rhyme, ready for my trash to try and earn their revenge. This time, I lead with the duo of Sunkern and Snom. They're not heavy hitters, but these guys are tanky enough to survive a few hits, while Snom also lays down an Icy Wind, dealing some chip damage to both enemies, while also lowering their speed. On the next turn, Sunkern gives out one last helping hand before it falls at the hands of Banette, after which Snom dishes out more solid chip damage with Icy Wind. Now I send in Azurill. Since Azurill is a part normal type, I expect Rhyme to target Snom instead, and this works out perfectly. Snom falls, but eats both attacks in the process. This allows Azurill to hit a very important Belly Drum, maxing out our attack. However, I need to make sure that Azurill isn't Rhyme's target, so I intentionally send in Ralts next. Since Ralts is weak to Ghost, it should be the target of Rhyme's attacks. Except that's not what happened. I terrestrialize Ralts and use Protect, but this ends up being a total waste, as an Aqua Jet from Azurill quickly finishes off the weakened Banette. Rhyme then targets Azurill with Slash, but our baby blue mouse just hangs on. And this is where our plan really comes to fruition. Since we terrestrialized, the crowd gives both of our Pokemon an Omni Boost, raising all of our stats. This means that both of our best strategies are now in play, with both Azurill and Ralts being buffed up at the same time. On the next turn, a single Aqua Jet finishes off the weakened Mimikyu before Ralts hits Houndstone with a supercharged stored power, finishing it in one hit. This leaves Rhyme with only her Toxtricity, but at this point, resistance is futile, as our duo combines with two final attacks, wiping Toxtricity off the map, securing a very unexpected win. I expected that fight to be a massive hurdle for our team, but we had clawed our way to the 6th badge on only our 2nd try. Our team was still holding their own, and for the first time, I started to truly believe that we might go all the way. What a fool I was. For now though, with Rhyme behind us, we were back to single battles with the final 2 gym leaders on the horizon. Our opponents' teams were starting to get tougher, but our strategies are still holding strong. Against Tulip, it's a pretty familiar story, with our team working together to nerf her physical attacking lead before Ralts hits the field and starts to go Super Saiyan with Calm Mind. Then, once Trick Room goes up, our frail little Psychic type absolutely sweeps through Tulip's 4 far stronger Psychic types, giving us a quick win. Then, against Grusha for badge number 8, things are slightly more complicated since his Frostmoth is difficult to set up on. But thankfully, our bulky Snom is a total Chad, standing up to its evolution, dealing some pretty respectable damage before Snom is eventually overpowered. However, at this range, Azurill can finish off the Icy Moth with an Aqua Jet. In response, Grusha sends in his physical attacking Beartic, and this is where our regular programming resumes. Just like against Tulip, we gradually nerf Beartic into the dirt before Ralts comes in and does its thing. After another quick barrage of stored powers, Grusha was defeated and we had claimed the 8th and final gym badge. I genuinely didn't expect us to make it this far when I began this challenge. Our team was just running through the mid-game of Pokemon Scarlet, and at this point, like me, you're probably wondering, can anything actually stop this team? Well, at least for our next few fights, the answer was a resounding no. The 4th team star boss, Ortega and his fairy types, have no real answer to our trademark Ralts strategy as we pull off another sweep, including another very satisfying one-shot on the fairy type Starmobile. After that, I thought that our next fight was pretty hilarious, because you'd expect the final Titan to be some big, bad, strong Pokemon. However, this giant whale just ends up getting completely soloed by Sunkern. Yes, Sunkern. With the combination of Leech Seed and Terra-boosted Giga Drains, Sunkern lays down the law, somehow managing to outlast the strongest Titan of the game in both of its first 2 phases. The 3rd phase against Tatsugiri is a little more complicated though. Regardless, Snom's Struggle Bugs help to nerf Tatsugiri's special attack, making it far easier to deal with, and with Ralts issuing one last kiss of death, we had conquered the final Titan with ease. And thankfully, the final team star boss is also pretty straightforward, although I did lose my first 2 attempts against Eri due to some poor planning that led to me basically getting swept by her lead Toxicroak. However, on the 3rd attempt, I just led with Ralts and instantly terrestrialized into a Psychic type. This baits Eri into using Sucker Punch for the next 5 turns, clearing us to set up a few Calm Minds and Trick Room. After that, it's a complete quick sweep of Eri's team as Ralts lays down a barrage of super effective stored powers. With that, a single Ralts had just soloed one of the hardest fights of the game entirely on its own. However, despite being in cruise control for our last few fights, this is where we hit a roadblock. Because up to this point, we've been taking on teams with 4 Pokemon or less, and with our current strategies, when it comes to setting up Trick Room with Ralts or the Rain with Azurill, these field changes only last for 5 turns. And since the first turn is taken up by actually using the move, this gives us 4 turns to attack. So far, 4 turns has been all that we need. However, from this point on, every fight is against 5 or 6 Pokemon, meaning that our current approach just wasn't going to work. Trick Room will expire before we can finish off our opponent, leaving our team entirely defenseless. This presents a massive spike in the difficulty curve, as next we would have to take on Arvin, boasting 6 powerful Pokemon with diverse type coverage. By far, this is our strongest opponent yet. And I mean, just look at the stat differences between our two teams. There is no way that this is even close to a fair fight. However, I wasn't going to give up that easily, as I still had a plan to take on Arvin. And the key to that plan is Sunkern. To start the fight, Arvin leads with his Greedent, and this fat rodent is annoying. It knows Body Slam, which has a high chance to cause paralysis, potentially ruining every attempt. Regardless, since it's a physical attacker, I lead with Azurill, who can quickly nerf it with Charm to -6 attack. After this, we bring in Scatterbug to land a Stun Spore before unleashing our almighty Sunkern. Sunkern's job here is only to use Leech Seed, but this is incredibly important to our strategy going forward. As is tradition, now we bring in Ralts and begin setting up our Calm Mind. And not only does Leech Seed help to give us some recovery, but more importantly, if we time this perfectly, we can have Ralts set up Trick Room on the exact same turn that Leech Seed finishes off Greedent. Effectively, this buys us an extra turn of Trick Room, and our strategy that could only take out 4 Pokemon before can now take out 5. This is massively important if we want any hope of taking on full teams of 6. So this clears Ralts to gradually begin sweeping through Arvin's next 4 Pokemon with stored power. However, then we encounter our next problem, Mabastiff. With Trick Room now having run out, we still have to contend with Arvin's Ace. It's faster than our entire team, has great move coverage, and gets a power boost from its Dark-type Terror. Obviously, our Ralts stands no chance here, as it just gets decimated by a super effective Crunch. Our team was now staring down certain death. And while Sunkern is able to tank a hit and set up Leech Seed, our team still just can't hold on long enough. One by one, our team is decimated by the overwhelming power of Arvin's Ace, as Mabastiff crunched its way through our entire team. Despite making it to Arvin's final Pokemon, that fight didn't really feel close, as I still don't really have a way to deal with his Mabastiff. But after giving it some thought, I tweaked my plan a little bit to try and give us some hope of dealing with Mabastiff before marching back towards Arvin and demanding a rematch. The start of the fight is still practically the same, as we begin our setup with Ralts, while making sure to set up Trick Room on the same turn that Greedent falls to Leech Seed. And after a quick barrage of stored powers yet again wipes through Arvin's next 4 Pokemon, once again we were left only to deal with Mabastiff. Although things immediately start looking grim, as Arvin quickly crushes our Ralts, and Scatterbug also falls in one shot, meaning we can't land paralysis. Despite holding an Ockerberry, Snom still dies to a critical hit Firefang, and this was beginning to look like another pathetic failed attempt. Until Azurill hits the field. This time, our baby blue ball is just able to tank a Firefang before hitting Mabastiff with a very crucial charm. While this doesn't stop Azurill from falling on the next turn, this nerf is vital, as now Kricketot is able to survive a hit before using Growl to nerf the Dark-type dog even further. Kricketot quickly falls, leaving us all down to a 1v1, Mabastiff versus Sunkern. Thanks to those stat drops, our bulky Sunkern can now tank crunches pretty well, allowing us to land a Leech Seed. By combining this with Protect, we can stall out extra damage onto Mabastiff while also leeching back even more health. With the added help of some Terra-boosted Giga Drains, this strategy works perfectly, as Arvin's Ace is gradually stalled out by a literal Sunkern, giving us an enormous win. Arvin runs off in tears, probably in fear of our dreaded all-powerful Sunkern. Somehow, our team of trash had actually conquered a team of 6 powerful, fully evolved Pokemon. And it was at this point that I truly started to believe maybe we could really go all the way. With Arvin now taken down, our next 2 fights are against Clavel and Penny. Just like Arvin, both of them have full teams of 6. Neither of these fights are necessarily harder than Arvin, but they do require some changes to our strategy. For example, against Clavel, his leader Rangaroo is really annoying since it likes to put you to sleep with Yawn. So, to get around this, we have our Sunkern hit a Rangaroo with Worry Seed, a move that changes its ability to Insomnia, which prevents sleep. This means that when Ralts hits the field, our Trace allows us to copy a Rangaroo's ability, meaning that now, Ralts can't be put to sleep. This makes our setup for this fight much easier, as Ralts can now clear through the majority of Clavel's team. While his Ace Quaquaval is still deadly, Azurill has a pretty good matchup here and can nerf the oversized duck with Charm. From here, Sunkern can clean up the fight once again, giving us another win in quick succession. Clavel had now been crushed, and the fight against Penny is even simpler. First, Ralts does what it does best, clearing through her first 5 evolutions. But since Penny's Ace is a special attacker, and we have a massively boosted special defense stat thanks to Calm Mind, even with Trick Room now expired, Ralts can just straight up tank an attack before sending Sylveon directly to the Shadow Realm. With those 3 wins, we had proven that it is possible for our Legion of Garbage to take on full teams of 6. Although, our strategy with Azurill's Belly Drum had completely fallen off, meaning we were now entirely dependent on Ralts' Trick Room to carry us through the rest of this game. So, with my trash team in tow, we headed for the Pokemon League. But before we can take it on, first, we have to pass a very difficult quiz. Tell me, Garbage Man, do you like Pokemon? The ones on my team? Absolutely not. They are undeniably garbage. After somehow passing the test, we have to take on the Elite Four. They each have teams of 5 Pokemon, so you might think that this would be easier than our fights with Arvin or Clavel. Well, at least in the case of Rika, that does hold true, as we quickly blitz through her team. However, then we come up against our toughest fight yet, Poppy. Yeah, despite being a literal child, Poppy is by far our hardest fight yet. Almost as if she was designed purely to be the garbage man that takes out our trash team for good. Let me explain why. To start with, both of our ace Pokemon, Ralts and Azurill, are weak to steel types. This makes setting up against Poppy really hard, as both of our Charmers are outsped and one-shot by Poppy's Copperaja. And since all of our Pokemon are small and weak, Copperaja's Heavy Slams deal enormous damage, which lets it wipe through the majority of our team. It also knows Stealth Rock, which makes it even harder for our frail bugs to survive. That all sounds bad enough, but it only addresses Poppy's first Pokemon. The rest of her team are also problematic. Her Corviknight has coverage against literally our entire team, Magnezone has Sturdy, so it's guaranteed to at least survive one hit, and her Bronzong is so slow that even if we do set up Trick Room, it'll still move before Ralts. All of these factors combined just make this fight a nightmare. I got brutalized over and over again, as this toddler just rained down terror onto our helpless team. Very quickly, we racked up 3 more losses, while I struggled trying to figure out some kind of plan. Although, as our 4th attempt began, I knew that there must be a way to win this. I just needed a little luck on my side. This time, I lead with Scatterbug, who outspeeds Copperaja, paralyzing it with Stun Spore, before our brave bug is smushed by Heavy Slam. But thanks to that paralysis, Azurill is now able to outspeed Poppy, landing a Charm to harshly nerf Copperaja's attack. Due to Poppy taking a turn to set up Stealth Rock, as well as some paralysis luck, we're able to bring Copperaja down to -6 attack pretty quickly. After Azurill eventually falls, we then have Sunkern land a Leech Seed onto Copperaja before switching out into Ralts. Despite Ralts holding an Eviolite, we still take big damage from Heavy Slam and Stealth Rocks as we hit the field. So I immediately terrestrialize Ralts, as this removes our Fairy type along with our weakness to Steel. As a result, Heavy Slam now does way less damage, with our Leech Seed recovery helping to keep Ralts relatively healthy. This allows us to boost up with Calm Mind before setting up Trick Room on the exact same turn that Copperaja falls to Leech Seed. Poppy sends in Corviknight next, which gets completely stomped by a stored power. She then follows with Bronzong, which moves first under Trick Room, dealing big damage damage with an Iron Head. Thankfully though, Ralts doesn't get flinched as another stored power sends Bronzong to the afterlife. But Magnezone hits the field next, and this thing is a problem. Thanks to its sturdy ability, Magnezone will always survive the next attack. And with Ralts at low HP, this makes things very dicey. Since we can't KO Magnezone regardless, I decide to hit it with Draining Kiss to at least give us some HP back. Magnezone then just sets up a light screen, which is fine. However, now we only have one turn left of Trick Room, meaning that if I take out Magnezone now, Poppy's Ace Tinkaton will then just run right through my team. Although, since Magnezone is a special attacker, I'm confident that Ralts can at least tank a few hits. So I stall for a turn by using Draining Kiss before Ralts eats the incoming Flash Cannon like a king. After that, now we can safely set up Trick Room again, giving us another 5 turns. Thankfully, we don't get paralyzed by Discharge, allowing us to eventually finish off Magnezone. This all means that once Tinkaton hits the field, Ralts can fire off one last stored power, crushing Tinkaton and securing us a very satisfying win. Poppy tries to look all innocent and sad after the fight, but don't you dare try to fool me. I know exactly what you are, you devil child. With the demonic Poppy now behind us, thankfully, the final 2 fights of the Elite Four are much more straightforward by comparison. We don't have to worry about sturdy or any priority moves, so our stored power strategy works perfectly here as Ralts sweeps through the final 2 Elite Four members on our very first try. Despite the difficulty curve getting significantly steeper, our team was still holding their own, and it felt like we had clawed back some momentum. However, then we had to face up against Geeta. Generally, Geeta is considered to be one of the weakest champions in Pokemon. Her team is poorly designed, and she doesn't even have her own Hall of Fame room. But in this challenge, Geeta is a menace. This team of hers has so many threats that specifically make it a nightmare for us to deal with. Her Avalugg is so slow that it'll move first under Trick Room and absolutely annihilate our frail little Ralts. Her Veluza has priority Aqua Jets, and King Gambit also has Sucker Punch on top of being immune to our Psychic type attacks. But possibly the most challenging part of Geeta's team is her lead, Espathra. First of all, it has the ability Opportunist, which means that if we try to boost up our stats, Espathra will also boost its stats too. This makes using Calm Mind against it problematic. On top of that, it also knows the move Lumina Crash, which harshly nerfs our special defense, making it even harder to survive against this thing. Combine all of these Pokemon together, and Geeta's team is just such a massive hurdle for us to overcome. I tried this fight several times, but just lost over and over again, usually at the hands of either King Gambit or Avalugg. I was barely even making it through half of Geeta's team, and knew that I needed to do something drastic if we wanted any chance of becoming champion. But then, I realized something. See, all 4 of Geeta's physical attackers are really slow. So, instead of minimizing Ralts' speed and trying to rely on Trick Room, instead, we can maximize Ralts' speed stat, which is shockingly fast enough to just straight up outspeed the majority of Geeta's Pokemon. It's such a simple idea, and it didn't even cross my mind at first, since we've basically been slower than our opponents since the 3rd gym. But against a team like Geeta's, this is actually possible. Her Espathra lead is still a problem, but I have a plan to deal with it. First, by leading with Snom, we can fire off 2 Struggle Bugs, significantly nerfing its special attack. Then, after paralyzing Espathra with Scatterbug's deadly Stun Spore, we can once again bring in the GOAT, Sunkern. Except, Sunkern gets hit by a Lumina Crash before getting slammed on the next turn before it even had the chance to do anything. While this does make things more complicated, thankfully it doesn't affect the overall outcome. Despite Espathra's Opportunist ability, Ralts is still able to set up 4 Calm Minds before reaching critical health. And this is where Ralts goes completely wild, because a Draining Kiss is all we need to finish off Espathra. And now that we're faster than Geeta's next 4 Pokemon, Ralts is clear to wipe through them with a combination of Mystical Fire, Draining Kiss, and stored power. So, before long, Geeta was down to only her ace, Glomora. Glimmora may be faster than Ralts, but thanks to our boosted special defense, Ralts can barely survive a hit, after which we fire back with a supercharged stored power, wiping Geeta's ace straight back into the trash where it belongs. With that, the worst possible team in the game had somehow beaten the top champion in all of Paldea. Oh my god, how could the champion lose to a team like that, right? You must really suck to lose to a team like mine. If the other champions ever hear about this, I'll never get invited to the Masters 8 tournament. That loss will not be helping Geeta fight off the worst champion of all time allegations. But despite now being champions, we weren't done with this game yet, as Pokemon Scarlet still has 2 fights left for us to try and overcome. However, thankfully, the first of these is pretty straightforward. Nemona's team is pretty deadly, but it's nothing in comparison to what comes next. So we quickly dealt with Nemona using our tried and tested strategy, leaving us with only 1 fight left: Sada. By far the hardest fight of Pokemon Scarlet, and one of the hardest fights in the entire franchise. The total stats of her team are ridiculous at over 3,400, which is triple the total stats of my team. On top of that, she also has a Ralts on steroids, a powerful Brute Bonnet with priority Sucker Punch, and one of the strongest Dark types in all of Pokemon, which also gets an attack buff thanks to its booster energy. Overall, Sada's team is powerful and treacherous, making it the perfect final hurdle to see whether our weak, pathetic, yet lovable team of trash could actually go all the way. And so, with the worst team possible by our side, we began the trek downward through Area 0, until eventually we were met by the terrifying final boss, Professor Sada. Sada leads with her Slitherwing, both a bug fighting type and a physical attacker, which is a really good matchup for us. So I lead with Kricketot, but despite resisting bug type attacks, a lunge from Slitherwing still almost gets the KO in a single shot. As a result, Kricketot is only able to land 1 growl before falling on the following turn. But thanks to that growl, now I know that our Scatterbug can at least tank 1 hit, which allows us to also get the paralysis with Stun Spore. Although Scatterbug falls immediately after, meaning this fight is already down to a 4v6. But this is where our strategy really starts to get rolling, because with Azurill holding the Eviolite, we begin using Charm to gradually nerf Slitherwing's attack into the dirt. With the big bug now at -6 and Azurill at just over half health, we briefly bring in King Sunkern to land a Leech Seed before switching once again into Ralts. As is tradition, Ralts then begins using Calm Mind to boost its stats. Slitherwing's attacks still dish out solid damage, but thankfully, the Leech Seed helps to keep Ralts on life support. And while Sada's attacks lower both our attack and speed, neither of these have any impact on our plan. So, eventually, once Ralts is buffed up with Calm Mind, we make sure to set up Trick Room at the exact same turn that Slitherwing finally falls to Leech Seed. Sada then sends in her Flutter Mane, which would be able to solo our entire team if we didn't have Trick Room. But thanks to that, Ralts moves first, as a stored power sends that Ghost type straight back to the afterlife. The Sandy Shocks that follows suffers the exact same fate, as does the Scream Tail that Sada sends out after that. Now Sada was down to only 2 Pokemon, but these are the most dangerous 2 on her roster. Her Brute Bonnet with priority Sucker Punch, as well as the Dark-type Dragon, Roaring Moon. I intentionally haven't terrestrialized Ralts, since that would make us weak against Dark. And sure enough, Brute Bonnet instantly goes for Sucker Punch, and we just survive! Ralts holds on with red HP, allowing us to fire off a big super effective Draining Kiss, wiping out Brute Bonnet in 1 shot, while also fully recovering our health. Although, Ralts being back to full health makes no difference, as now, with Trick Room expired, our melon-headed Psychic type is a sitting duck. Of course, it only takes a single Night Slash for Ralts to be sliced in half. So now we only had 3 Pokemon left to try and take down one of the strongest Pokemon in the entire game. We don't have any great options here, so I just send out Azurill and simply pray that we can survive a hit as Roaring Moon charges up another deadly attack, and we hold on! Azurill just survives, allowing it to use Perish Song, a move which guarantees that Roaring Moon will faint in 3 turns. By using Protect, Azurill helps to stall out the next turn before our heroic Blue Ball falls on the turn after that, and this clears the way for Magikarp to hit the field. Despite Roaring Moon hitting us with Dragon Claw, Magikarp survives on 1 HP thanks to its Focus Sash. As a result, Sada has no choice but to watch on in horror as our useless Magikarp outlives Roaring Moon, with the Ancient Dragon ultimately falling to perish song. With that, the worst possible team had somehow beaten all of Pokemon Scarlet. Despite their natural limitations, these guys banded together to truly become a dominant force. Sada is so embarrassed by the loss that she has to flee the whole timeline altogether, with our team of trash now sitting at the top of the Paldean food chain. Jump into this video next for more Pokemon content. You better be subscribed after seeing how insane that challenge was, and let me know in the comments which team member of our Legion of Trash was your MVP. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.